The Mitch Lafon and Jeremy White Show.
The Mitch Lafon and Jeremy White Show.
Available wherever you stream.
Catch up on past interviews and episodes on demand now.
Subscribe so you don't miss any of it.
Look, very stoked to welcome back to the show John Drasik from Fight for Fighting and Pete Thorn on the show for the first time. Their new song, Can One Man Save the World, available now. Go stream it, go download it, go watch the music video. You can also donate. You got the links in the description on the YouTube video and everything, and it all goes to Save Our Allies, which is a fantastic cause. It's incredible how, like Pete, I've never had you on the show before because I'm a big fan. I followed a YouTube channel, all your guitar videos and stuff. Big Van Halen fan. Of course, today is the anniversary of Edward Van Halen passing away. Talk a little bit about that and talk a little bit about Edward and the impact that he had on your life.
Oh, man. I mean, Eddie was my, I always say, like a spiritual guitar godfather, He had such a big impact on me growing up. And then years later, I actually got a chance to become friends with him, which was just unbelievable. Around 2009, I was introduced to him. And it was actually through Chris. It's kind of a crazy, it's a crazy long story, but it was through Chris that we initially met. And,
would Chris hang out with Edward, or?
Sorry?
Would Chris hang out with Edward, or like?
No, he did. So they were buddies back around the late, I believe it's like kind of late 90s, maybe early 2000s. And Eddie always wanted to do something with Chris, musically.
Edward Van Halen and Chris Cornell. Imagine that.
Yeah, it's all over. There's nothing tops that.
No,
Eddie loved his voice, and that's just, he used to be like, man, I love him. We were always talking about doing something together, and so that's how I met him. It's a crazy long story, and I don't know if you have time.
We got the time. If you want to tell the story, go for it.
Well,
I want to hear the story.
Okay, now I'm getting myself into it. Here's what happened. So, I recorded a few versions of songs from Chris's Scream album, which came out in 2009, I do believe, or 8 or 9. It was a kind of an interesting collaboration between Chris and Timbaland. Yeah. And so it was a totally different kind of album for Chris. And I wanted to actually record a couple tunes and kind of produce them up in a completely different style, like very acoustic bass, stripped down. And just because a song is a song is a song, and you can approach it in so many different ways. You could make a metal song into a country song if you just produce it differently.
Mutt Lange and Bob Rock will have two different sounding records.
Exactly. So I produced up a couple versions of a song called Long Gone and Scream, the title track from the album, in a very stripped down kind of acoustic way with brushes on the snare drum and upright bass and stuff, and me playing acoustic guitar. So Chris listened to them. He's like, I love this, man. This is like, this is working. Right from where I'm sitting right now, we're across the street in a parking lot listening to them in my car, I remember. Wow. And he looked at me and he said, hey, what do you think if we got Eddie to work on this? If we would ask him to play on it? And he didn't even say Eddie Van Halen. He just said Eddie, because we'd talked about that he had a friendship with him. And I was like, are you serious? Like, are you kidding me? Like, cause I was like 100%, like, yeah, like, let's do that.
Yeah.
So anyway, I was so excited. And he said, okay, I'll get in touch with him. Now, Chris, like a lot of songwriters, he would have a lot of ideas and think about things and stuff. And then they might just kind of go away, right? He's an idea guy. He's an artist. So, nothing happened over the next few weeks. I think I might have asked him once or twice, and, oh, yeah, I got to do that. I got to hit him up. And nothing happened. Well, one day, my good friend Dave Friedman, who did all Eddie's paddleboard work and rack work and stuff, I was in his shop, and he said, I'm on my way up to Ed's, up to 5150 to do some work. And I said, can you do me the biggest favor? Can you just ask? Say, Chris Cornell floated the idea of you maybe working on a song. And would you be interested in something like that? And he said, yeah, sure. And 45 minutes later, he texted me. He said, Ed wants you to call him. Here's his cell phone number.
Dude.
I was just like, oh,
come on.
Yeah. Okay. So I'll try and not make this story too long because I can go on and on.
No, keep going. Keep going.
I called him and I left him a message. And which I'm nervous as hell, but hi, this is Pete Thorn. I play with Chris Cornell. And,
Are you trying to be professional or are you fangirling?
Oh, I was totally trying to be professional. Keep it cool. You have to, Yeah. But so I left him a message and he called me back a couple days later and we spoke and he said, well, how soon can you come up to the studio and play me this stuff? And I was just like, I can't believe this is happening. So we set up a date. I drove up to 5150, and he was just so cool. I get out of the car, and there he is, and he gives me a big hug. And he said, okay, let's go up to the studio and take a listen. Before that, he said, come in the house, hang out. I got to eat something. He was eating a chicken salad. I remember that. It was just like, this is my hero,
This is awesome.
Yeah. And then we drove up to the studio, and he took me in 5150, and he didn't know that he was so humble in many ways, and sort of unassuming. And he said, this is the studio where we've done everything since 1984. That was the album with Jump on it.
Yeah,
and I was thinking like, yeah, I know.
I'm well aware.
OB8 setting A1. That's right.
You're like that. That's
exactly.
That's the Pound Cake H3000. I see it.
Totally. So anyways, we put on the track, and we sat there at the console and listened to this song. And I just, it's me playing acoustic guitar on it with my buddy Toss on drums and John Button on bass. And I'm sitting there listening to it come out of speakers, just thinking, I thought I would meet this fella sometime, and I didn't know it would be under this kind of, under in this
those
situation.
Circumstances.
So it was incredible. And I don't want to get anybody excited thinking that this ever got finished, because it didn't. But he did work on it. And I would go up there over the next couple of weeks, and he had played on it, and I would listen to it and just be like, I can't believe this is happening, but this is, myself and Eddie on a track. Mm-hmm. And then it's a long story, but it's just, it never got a vocal on it by Chris. That was what it was. And Ed got busy doing the next Van Halen record right around then, and producing things up. And it ended up, he was just like, yeah, man, I got busy doing this. And it just never ended up getting finished. But if anybody has seen Chris on tour during his songbook tour, he played to records on stage during that tour. I think it was 2011, 2012, and he would kind of drop the needle on an album and then play along. That's actually the version of the song that Ed played on. If you can find that on YouTube, him playing along to the song Scream on tour during his songbook tour. And that's, he kind of wanted it to look like a living room on stage, like he was just jamming at home. So he dropped the needle on an album. He had the version put on an LP. And but that's not the version with Ed on it, because I heard it once. I went up there and listened to what Ed had done on it, and then we just never finished it. It was just one of those things,
You never got a copy of like the rough demo with Ed, or like playing.
Unfortunately, I only heard it like really once going up there to listen to the work that he'd done on it. And so somewhere at 5150, there's a 24-track reel with that on it. And someday I'd love to,
It was on tape?
But yeah, he did it on tape. What? He did it. I could go on and on about that too. He doesn't work in Pro Tools. He said, "How do you record?" And I said, "I record in Logic, the DAW, right, the digital audio workstation." And he said, "I use Logic too. That's why I record analog."
Yes, that's my favorite thing ever.
This is hilarious. But so, yeah, he just took a 2-track version of the song that I gave him. He literally dumped it down to 24-track reel. And I remember this. His remote was broken for his Studer tape deck right then. And the machine, the Studer, was all the way around in another room from the control room where he was going to sit and play guitar. So he described to me that when he was working on it, he had to run out to the machine room, push record on the machine, run back in with enough leader on the tape, listen for the count, and then start playing. I thought, I've got Eddie Van Halen running back and forth between the control room and his machine room.
Oh my God.
It was
unbelievable. Unbelievable.
It was crazy. But anyway, we stayed friends for the next 10 years after that. And I would go up there and visit him sometimes. I ended up working on some videos for his, different guitar pedals and stuff, because I do that for you.
Yeah, I've seen a bunch of those. Yeah.
Yeah, and so and he was just really gracious. I mean, he was just such a swell guy. He was just awesome. I mean, he got me tickets to see Jeff Beck. I remember in 2010. He's like, "You want to go see Jeff? I'll get you on the list."
That's awesome.
You remember like Eddie Van Halen getting you a pass to go see Jeff Beck. It was just like, he was such a sweet dude, and I just can't say enough good things about him. So
that seems to be the overall sentiment about all the people we've spoken to about Edward. It's like overall he was just a nice guy.
He really was at the core. He had his troubles and his ups and downs like anybody. But I will say, from the time that I met him till till his unfortunate passing, which is just like you say, today's the anniversary, 2 years. It's hard to believe, but he was just so on the straight and narrow and working hard, eating healthy, working out. And that guy was tough. I mean, he went through a lot of stuff that not a lot of people know about. I mean, he had bouts of illness and all kinds of things. And he just was so working so hard to be healthy and just be the best guy he could be, and I think a lot of that was he was such a great father. He was there for Wolf, and Wolf gave him like a real shot in the, he just loved his son so much, and so he wanted to be there, and he was just living this the best life he could, the whole time that I knew him. So yeah, it was special.
Did he ever gift you like any gear or anything, or? Yes.
Yeah. I've got a Wolfgang guitar, and one time I brought him a phaser for Christmas, a custom made in Canada. Actually, it's a company called Retrosonic, and the guy had it was like a really nice version of a Phase 90, and he had the whole backplate engraved to Edward Van Halen for he did it for me.
Oh, that's cool.
I got him his phaser, and I brought it to him, and he was like, "Oh man, I gotta," and he's like, "I gotta give you something." He ran in the other room. He got me a pair of the striped Converse, and then he got me a wah pedal. So I've got one of his striped, Eddie Van Halen wahs. And he was just handing me all this stuff. Take this, this. It was so sweet, So
love that.
Yeah,
love that.
Hell of a guy.
The Mitch Lafon and Jeremy White Show.
The Mitch Lafon and Jeremy White Show.
Available wherever you stream.
Catch up on past interviews and episodes on demand now.
Subscribe so you don't miss any of it.